Hey guys, I'm John Anderson, and welcome again to Home Groups. It's great to have you guys here tonight. I'm just going to jump right in. We are starting a new series on relationships, which is the only series that we do every single year. And to get us started, I want to invite you guys back with me to my middle school years. So on the screen, you're going to see some of my 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade class shots. So here they are. And by now I think we're on the 8th grade shot, and I just want to take a second and pause right there. So this one, man, all these years are a little rough, right? But you guys are going to look back and think the same thing about yours. But in 8th grade especially, there's this fashion statement that should have never happened, and these t-shirts, the older leaders might be familiar with this. It was called Hypercolor, and they were really cool at the time. But what they were was these shirts that when they changed temperatures, they would change colors, which is the worst idea ever. Because imagine just with me, like, what parts of your body get the warmest, right? Like, I had this purple shirt, that's what you're seeing in the picture, and I think it was getting older then, and it would turn pink. And the first place that it would turn pink was under the armpits. It was awful. Terrible. Anyways, the reason I want to bring that up is because a lot of you guys know some of my story. And my story is that I grew up and I was homeschooled. A little shout out to the homeschoolers out there. Through 6th grade, and then I switched to a public school in 7th grade, and then was in public school until I graduated high school. And for me, 7th grade, honestly, up to this point in my life, was probably one of the hardest years I've ever had. And it was hard for a lot of reasons, and a lot of them are the same things that you guys are going through in your middle school experience. But I think, looking back, one of the reasons that it was the hardest for me is that I believed a lie. And the lie was this, that my value, my worth as a person came out of the relationships that I was in. So whoever I was with, however many friends I had, however popular those friends were, that's how good I felt about myself. And I realized that was a lie because it's a passage that we're going to look at tonight. So take your Bibles, if you've got one, cool. And we're going to look at the very beginning in Genesis. A little context for this passage in Genesis. So we're right at the very beginning. And it's the creation story. So God is creating different parts of all creation over 6 different days, and then he rests on the 7th day. And where we're going to jump in is on day 6. And so just follow along with me. I think the words are going to be up here on the screen, starting in verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image and in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over livestock and all the wild animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God then blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number." I just want to pause there, and I want you guys to ask your parents what that verse means. Okay, we'll jump back in. "Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. And then in this last verse, I kind of picture God sitting down in a, like a giant rocking chair, just looking out over all of his creation. And it says this: "God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day." All right, this is really an incredible story. So we see a couple important things that are going on. First of all, we see in this story something that you guys as middle school students already get. You totally get this. And when I'm going to say it, you're going to be like, duh, of course, right? We see in the story that God made people to be relational beings. That he like hardwired us from the very beginning to need other people and to be in relationship with them. And when I say this to you guys, this is one of the things I love about middle school students is you guys totally get this. Like, the first question you ask if it's snow camp or some other event is, "Are my friends going to be there? Who else is going?" Right? Like, you almost don't care what it is as long as your friends are part of it. And that's cool because that kind of reflects how God created you, and that's a really good thing. But the reason I bring that up is because there's something that happens often in middle school, and if it hasn't happened yet, for many of you it will, and that's great, is that the whole relational thing kind of gets a little screwy, gets a little different in middle school because you start treating oftentimes, and this is again not true for everybody, you start treating and thinking about the opposite sex in kind of a different way. And what goes from being like, oh, gross, becomes like, oh, kind of like exciting and kind of interesting, right? And girls often find themselves talking more and more about boys, and sometimes to the point where it's like, stop, we got it, right? Like, you like boys, cool. And dudes, they don't really talk about girls as much. They just kind of like, and stare. And this is where like things get weird, right? And so this is why we have this series, is wherever you guys are at, whether you're in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, whether you're totally disinterested in dating or even like thinking about the opposite sex, or whether that's like what you spend all your time thinking about. We want this series to be a place where you can ask your questions, to be really honest and really safe with your 4-to-1, with your leader. And hopefully also, as much as you're willing and able, take these conversations home with your parents and just talk about this stuff, because it's awkward and weird, but it's universal, and you guys are not alone in going through a lot of these things or through any of these things. And so that's why we have this series, is just to encourage you guys to talk about relationships and what it means to be relating with each other in a healthy way. Now, the second thing I want to point out in these verses, and I want to just read the last verse again, because I think it's so important, is this. So let me read this last verse again. It said, God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. All right, so that's it. Here's something amazing about the truth of this, is that when God made us, he made us very good. The truth is, God does not make crap. And this is so important because it's true about every single one of you guys. You guys are incredibly valuable. You are made in the image of God. In fact, somewhere else in the Bible, it talks about how you are God's masterpiece, or you're God's artwork. And this is true not only of you, but it's true of the person sitting next to you. It's true of the person sitting next to you in your classes. It's true of the teachers you have. It's true of the people on your sports teams, in all your extracurriculars. They are God's masterpiece. They bear the image of God. And this is an incredible truth. But sadly, I think, and this is true, unfortunately, in our home groups oftentimes, is that we don't treat each other like that. We put each other down, we make fun of each other, we get cliques, and when new people come in, we kind of shut them out. And we're just not really loving and welcoming sometimes. And I want to be honest with you guys, I see this sometimes in our home groups, and it really makes me sad. I want to challenge you guys to remember that you are made in the image of God, and therefore you are incredibly valuable, but so are the people around you. And we need to learn how to treat each other like that. And so I want to do something just kind of silly just to close, but I think it just, like doing something with our bodies can help us remember this. So I want you to take your finger, right, like you're pointing your finger, that you're so good at pointing out maybe sometimes people's weaknesses, and I want you to start and just point to the person next to you, right, and point at them right now. Okay, you got it? Do it. Dudes, I'm watching you. Do it. All right, so point at the person next to you and just be like, you're made in the image of God. You got it? All right, and then I want you to turn to the next person and say, you are God's masterpiece. You do that? All right, so throughout the rest of the night, I want you, next time somebody puts somebody down, makes fun of somebody, I want the leaders, I want you to stop and make the person point at that person and be like, I'm sorry, you're God's masterpiece. And I want that to become part of the culture as we talk about relationships, as we interact with one another, and that our places would be incredibly welcoming, loving, because God made us incredibly valuable. And that's my hope for us as we go into this series about relationships, that it would be a safe place to ask our questions, and that we would remember at the end of the day, every single one of us bears the image of God, and we need to treat each other accordingly. So let me just say good night to you guys, and I hope you have great discussions. Have a good night.